sponsored by Telomobile. The OnePlus Nord 2 has big boots to fill, arriving as the direct successor to one of last year's best affordable flagships. The Nord 2 promises more of the stuff you actually need in a phone with fewer compromises. But for OnePlus itself, this phone also lands right as the brand is having something of an identity crisis, having now officially been subsumed into parent company Oppo. So is this the flagship killer it's made out to be, or are we looking at just another mid-range Android phone? I'm Alex from Android Central, and this is our review of the OnePlus Nord 2. Take a sec to subscribe so you don't miss more reviews like this one, and we'll get started. So price is super important for a phone like the Nord 2. This is a €400 phone which, like the first Nord, feels a lot more like using an expensive flagship than you might think. The design is pretty sharp looking, especially in the trademark Nord blue colour here, and while the general look and feel hasn't changed too much since 2020, there's definitely a little bit of OnePlus 9 DNA here, especially in the camera hump around the back. Otherwise, you've still got a flat display and a fairly curvy design overall, with a glass back sporting the same fingerprint resistant coating as the original Nord. The sidewalls once again look metallic but are basically fancy plastic. There is a flowery marketing name for exactly what this is, but for all intents and purposes this is just polycarbonate wearing a monocle and a top hat. It looks like metal, but it's not, and it will tend to scuff a little bit more easily. The biggest hardware upgrade this year might be the one you can't directly see. The Nord 2 runs MediaTek's Dimensity 1200 AI chipset, the AI bit meaning it has more neural networking horsepower than the off-the-shelf Dimensity 1200. Technically this 1200 AI is exclusive to OnePlus, but we'll be seeing a bunch of other phones using the base model 1200 soon enough. Benchmarks, if you care about those, line up pretty close to a Snapdragon 865 in terms of raw CPU power, though of course that doesn't take into account any of that AI stuff or the faster GPU of the Dimensity chip. So you get the idea. This is a very speedy phone all round. In terms of everyday stuff I do on a smartphone, there's pretty much no difference between this and a device that costs double or even triple its price. Depending on how much you pay, you'll get 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, or 12 plus 256 if you opt for the high-end model I've been using. Either way, all of the other OnePlus essentials can be found here, including the fast and reliable in-screen fingerprint, and Face Unlock, which is super quick, but can't be used for Google Pay and certain other secure apps. And of course the always handy OnePlus Alert slider is back too. Warp Charge 65 makes a return as well, bringing one of the quickest wired charging standards to this affordable flagship. And it'll refill the built-in 4500 mAh battery in just half an hour. That's all the more impressive since the Nord 2 slightly outperforms the current OnePlus flagships when it comes to battery longevity. Even under heavier use on 5G, the Nord would sip power, and I generally had at least 30% left in the tank after a full day, often with up to 5 hours of screen on time. Like the previous Nord, the display is a Full HD Plus AMOLED panel with a 90Hz refresh rate, but it has seen some upgrades in other areas. In particular, it's noticeably brighter than last year's Nord, making for a much more enjoyable experience using it outside, especially in the middle of the summer. 90Hz remains a pretty nice compromise, appearing almost as smooth as some of the 120Hz panels out there, but saving power in the process. The only thing to really set this screen apart from a much more expensive one is the slight chin area down below here, which is a little chunkier than you'd see from a top-end flagship. The speaker system though, while not terrible, definitely isn't among the best out there. It'll get more than loud enough, but that volume is accompanied by fairly tinny output that can even sound a little distorted at times. It pulls the usual loudspeaker plus earpiece tweeter trick, and I think a lot of the tinniness is coming from that earpiece. The other thing that's changed is the software, OnePlus's Oxygen OS. Though once again, to look at it you might not actually be able to tell. Oxygen OS 11.3 is the first version to be based on Oppo's ColorOS codebase. OnePlus recently confirmed that it'll be combining its code with Oppo's so that future versions of Oxygen OS can be more stable and get updates more quickly. So technically this is Oxygen OS 11.3 based on ColorOS 11.3. But in terms of using the Nord 2, this still very much looks and feels like Oxygen OS on, say, the OnePlus 9 or 9 Pro. The biggest tell is the camera app, which is pretty much just a reskinned version of the one from ColorOS, right down to the icons and the names of certain features. And there are some small clues hidden in parts of the settings app as well if you know where to look. Otherwise, this would appear to be the same clean and highly customizable version of Android 11 that we've been enjoying on OnePlus phones for almost a year. Google's Dialer and Messages apps are your defaults for calls and texts, bringing useful anti-spam features. The always-on ambient display is a nice touch with some creative options that you can choose from, and the Nord also benefits from on-device transcription thanks to Google's Live Transcribe feature. There have to be a few compromises though when you're dealing with a €400 phone, and as it turns out the main things you miss out on here are pretty much the same as they were a year ago with the Nord 1, wireless charging, water resistance, and Android updates. The lack of wireless charging is easy to forgive considering how fast this thing charges over a cable, and as for waterproofing, well, that's only a recent addition to OnePlus's flagship phones, and this phone's SIM slot does come with a rubber gasket, so chances are it'll survive a bit of rain without too much trouble. The update situation is a bit trickier. OnePlus promises 2 years of Android OS and security updates for the Nord 2, which is okay considering the price of this phone. The question is how long you'll have to wait to get those updates. Given that the original Nord didn't get Android 11 until March of 2021, almost 5 months later than the OnePlus 8 series. So even with OnePlus's promise of quicker updates thanks to that new shared codebase with Oppo, you'll probably want to go in with low expectations and maybe be pleasantly surprised if the Nord 2 gets Android 12 by early 2022. Everyone knows smartphones can be expensive, but here's the thing nobody tells you. You can afford the latest phone if you're smart enough to save on your phone bill. With Tello Mobile, you never pay for more than what you use, and what you use is totally up to you. With Tello, you're in complete control, so you get to build your own plan and add minutes and data as you like. Popular options include unlimited talk and text plus 1GB for $10 a month, 4GB for $19 a month, and 8GB for $29 a month with no annoying fees. All plans benefit from a 25% discount valid for the first 6 months of service. This offer is valid until August 31st. Tello works on 4G LTE and 5G nationwide in the US, plus every plan includes hotspot and comes with free international calls to more than 60 destinations. Basically what Tello's saying is anything your carrier can do, we can do better and a lot cheaper. That means no contract, great website, pay-as-you-go payment, and real human customer service. And when you find the smartphone of your dreams, you can bring it to Tello while keeping your number. Get more for less with Tello Mobile and use those extra savings to finally get your hands on the phone you really want. Outside of the processor, the camera setup has arguably received the biggest upgrade going from Nord 1 to Nord 2, and like the last Nord, OnePlus has focused much of its attention and its hardware budget on the main shooter. That main camera is a 50MP Sony IMX766, the same one Oppo uses in its Find X3 Pro. That's paired with an 8MP ultrawide, a 2MP monochrome, cue the usual groans about that largely pointless camera, and a fancy 32MP front facer. On the whole, the Nord 2's camera setup is a competitive offering that nips at the heels of some of the big-name flagships. That IMX766 does a lot of heavy lifting, giving reliably excellent performance regardless of lighting. OnePlus says it can resolve details in scenes as dark as 1 nit, and well, you'd better believe it. The results here are truly impressive. And of course the same goes for daylight shots as well. This is a competent sensor, and OnePlus's post-processing is equally reliable. Because there's no dedicated telephoto though, you really do start to get diminishing returns after around 2x, and at 5x, the maximum zoom level, things start to get pretty rough indeed. The same trade-offs apply in the opposite direction too with that ultra-wide camera. It's not as weak as the almost comically poor ultra-wide of the first Nord, but performance quickly falls away in darker conditions, to the point where, even with nightscape mode, you'll struggle to get a legible photo. The ultra-wide also can't shoot 4K video, you'll be limited to 1080 if you switch to it. Though once again, that main camera punches well above its weight in video mode, especially when it comes to stabilization and compensating for backlight. The selfie shooter has also pleasantly surprised me. Instead of including 2 mediocre selfie cameras like last year's phone, the Nord 2 includes 1 super high resolution front facer. And this one actually works with nightscape mode too, unlike the OnePlus 9 Pro. I do think it's a little trigger happy with HDR for my taste at times, but overall it's a fantastic little camera that really showcases how competitive this phone is. So is the OnePlus Nord 2 worth $400 of your favourite currency? As always, it comes down to what you want out of a phone. Its priorities broadly are pretty much the same as the original Nord. Nice to have extras like wireless charging and an IP rating go by the wayside in favour of a big beautiful screen and plenty of computational grunt, as well as trademark OnePlus features like Warp Charge 65. The fairly weak telephoto performance is disappointing, but the rest of the photo experience is solid, especially the main camera that's just as capable as some phones at twice its price. For a lot of people, the Nord 2's priorities and its compromises will be the right ones. And for me personally, I haven't missed much from the super high-end phone I was using before, outside of maybe the telephoto camera and wireless charging. So if you're willing to roll the dice on slower OS updates, what you're getting here is a hell of a phone for £400 or €400. And with it, a handset that makes the strongest case yet that you don't need to spend $1,000 or more to get the features and specs that really matter. That's it for now. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one, and let us know what you think of the Nord 2 down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.